දවස් 30ක්ම unlimited Netflix බලන්න. unlimited data pack එකක් මුළු පවුලටම unlimited fun එකක් අරගන්න. අදම active කරගන්න.
ලෙන්ගතුකම වැඩි කරගන්න ලව්ජු රුපියල් 50ට අඩු කළා.
මාමේ එන්න අපිට එකක් බොමු.
Tonight, mercury rising. With rising city temperatures exacerbating an already challenging time in the country, experts take a look at how Sri Lanka can cool down.
So in Colombo, we have a lot of possibility. We can encourage this sea breeze into the city by creating wind corridors.
No opposition. Parliament heats up as second and third readings of the Appropriation Bill passed without a vote.
We are confident that we can manage that with the resources that we are having, and we would like to prove you wrong.
Safety first. Sri Lanka reports 2 COVID-19 deaths today as health authorities issues guidelines for the celebration of the upcoming Deepavali festival. Riding the wave. Vaccine savior Pfizer faces insider trading accusations after CEO makes $5.6 million profit from personal share sales at recent peak. All this and much more coming up on this Thursday, the 12th of November 2020.
නව sunlight sakura. Then දිකුකල් පවතින sakura මල් සුවඳින්.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Shanila Fernando in your top stories for tonight. The second and third readings of the Appropriation Bill for the year 2020 were passed in Parliament today without a vote following its presentation in Parliament by Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa in his capacity as the Minister of Finance. The Appropriation Bill for the year 2021 is due to be presented to Parliament by the Premier on the 17th of this month, and the subsequent budget debate will continue until the 10th of December.
Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, in his capacity as the Minister of Finance, presided over the second reading of the Appropriation Bill for the year 2020 in Parliament today.
අපට හිමිව ඇති දුර්වල අයව ආර්ථිකය තුළ වුවත් කොරෝනා වෛරසය කළමනාකරණයට විශාල ප්‍රයත්නයක් දරා තිබෙනවා. කෙසේ වුවත් රෝගීන් හඳුනා ගැනීම, නිරෝධායන, නියම පරීක්ෂණ හා ආශ්‍රිත සුබසාධන කටයුතු සඳහා මේ වෙන විට රජය වියදම් කර ඇති මුදල් ප්‍රමාණය දැනට රුපියල් මිලියන 70,000ක් පමණ වෙනවා. අනපේක්ෂිතව දෙවන රැල්ලේ බලපෑමද සහිතව මරණ සංඛ්‍යාව වැඩි වුවත් අපට වඩා ඉදිරියෙන් ඇති බොහෝ රටවලට සාපේක්ෂව මරණ අනුපාතය 0.3ක තරම් අඩු මට්ටමකට තබා ගනිමින් නිරෝධායන ක්‍රියාවලියේ අපට ඉදිරියෙන් සිටීමට හැකි වී තිබෙන්නේ ඒ නිසායි. අපේ රජය 2020 සඳහා ගෙවීමේ තිබූ විදේශ ණය ඇතුළු සියලු ණය ගෙවූ බවද එම ගරු සභාවට වාර්තා කරන්නේ ඒ මහත් සතුටකිනි. එය ඉටු කර ගැනීමට හැකි වුණේ අනවශ්‍ය ලෙස විදේශ ණය ගැනීම අඩු කිරීම මෙන්ම ආනයන යම්තාක් දුරකට කළමනාකරණයට ගෙන ඇති උත්සාහය නිසායි.
The debate on the second reading of the Appropriation Bill then followed.
Article 148 of our Constitution very clearly says that Parliament shall have full control over public finance. No tax rate or any other levy shall be imposed by any local authority or any other public authority except by or under the authority of a law passed by Parliament or of any existing law. Until now there is no law passed for the financial year 2020 that the Parliament has approved. Resolution under 150 sub-article 2 authorize the drawing from the consolidated fund such sums of money that are necessary for specified public services only. You cannot do any developmental work. You can pay salaries of public servants and other expenditure directly related to public services. Expenditure was being made without proper authorization by Parliament. So there was a blatant violation of a limitation in the Constitution by this government. If you look at the bill before us, that has all kinds of developmental activities specified. It is blatantly revealing to us that what has been expended is far beyond the authority that the Constitution gives
the president. You have to either reprofile our debt and then try and get some way in which we should be able to go for some moratorium in the future. We have worked out the logistics as to how we are going to manage the debt, Honourable Member. So we are confident that we can manage that at this moment with the resources that we are having as well as with the plans that we are going to put in place. So we think at the moment we won't need to do that, and we would like to prove you wrong.
Safeguard hand sanitizer. නවතම නිෂ්පාදන පෙළ නිරෝගීමත් දිවයකට.
Man's continuous efforts towards development has brought about many technological advancements, but at the cost of a much larger problem, global warming. One of the biggest issues faced by urban environments, however, as a result of this is a phenomenon known as the urban heat island effect, with temperatures rising at a rapid rate. With this being the case, we took a closer look at the phenomenon and looked at what can be done to minimize its effects and cool down cities.
In order to cater to an ever-growing populace and the needs and demands stemming from them, urban cities continue to grow at an exponential rate. I'm standing right now in the city of Colombo, the beating heart of economic growth and the home to tens and thousands of people. Everything you ever need is just within an arm's length. But there's just one problem. It's hot. Cities continue to grow and expand to cater to the needs of a burgeoning population and create more space for economic growth. In order to achieve this, lands that were previously home to lush greenery have now been stripped bare and buildings have mushroomed in their place. As more buildings rise up, city temperatures rise as well, creating a phenomenon known as the urban heat island effect. The urban heat island effect is the phenomenon where urban cities or metropolitan areas become significantly warmer than surrounding rural areas due to human activity. This effect on Colombo over the last 30 years is startling and clearly visible through thermal satellite images taken of the city, with Sri Lanka recording average annual temperatures between 27.8 degrees Celsius to 30 degrees Celsius. You have to wonder what negative effects come with these increased temperatures.
When the temperature increases beyond 35 or so, you call it a heat wave. If the temperature in your environment goes beyond 35 or so, it can cause headaches, nausea, dizziness, dehydration, so many things. If the temperature rises even beyond 45, it can cause cardiovascular impacts, can badly affect your heart, kidneys, and you can even die sometimes if you are really sick. When you consider the average temperature, you might not see much difference. Over the years, when you consider the temperature within certain months, March, April, around that time, you can clearly feel that the temperatures have increased over time. Especially, we don't feel the impact as much as what the Indians experience because we are an island nation. The temperature increases not only affect us but even the other animals, plants, because even the slightest increase in temperature, even 0.02 degrees can wipe out certain species, especially insects and certain sensitive animals.
However, Sri Lanka boasts many natural plus points, a strategic location, northeastern and southwestern monsoonal rains, and natural sea breeze wafting over the country from all directions that may be helpful in tackling overheating. The University of Moratua's senior lecturer on country planning, Dr. Jagat Munasinghe, has some interesting suggestions on how city planners can make use of these resources when incorporating green designs into city planning.
So when the plan is done for a particular place, say for example Colombo, they have to be a little sensitive to the air corridors because air corridors naturally make it cooler. Building in the area also will find their heat load is reduced because of this natural wind corridor. Those have to be enhanced. So the wind has a certain way of behavior, right? It usually flows through in a kind of a tunnel effect. So when you create barriers on either side of its flow path, it has a natural tendency to kind of continue. That is how we encourage wind corridors. So in Colombo, we have a lot of possibility. We can encourage this sea breeze into the city by creating wind corridors. And at the same time, when we have open spaces located away from congested area, so wind has a certain flow pattern towards the vacuum air. So from where it originates, it flows into these vacuums. So the vacuums may be these open spaces like the marshes and the paddy fields so they can be connected in a certain way so that the wind flows naturally. People in between find it comfortable. Along these corridors, there can be a lot of planting. There can be a lot of shading so that the natural flow that is encouraged will not contain heat. It will be cooled throughout.
School children of all ages have always been taught that tree planting is the go-to solution in tackling global warming due to their ability to lower air temperatures and humidity. However, is this a feasible solution to the urban heat island effect?
Greening can have multiple options. You can have roadside trees, you can have parks, or you can have places where people can go for a walk, exercise and so on. And now these urban green areas can be designed in multiple ways. You have to first identify what is the area that you are going to green, and then you'll have to start planning, because you can't grow trees on every roadside because the built environment comes right next to the road front, so it doesn't give you any room to plant a tree there. So what you have to do is you have to identify what is the broader area that you want to go and intervene with, and then you'll have to first see what is the current green cover, and then you can identify where the gaps are. Also, you can see what are the areas where a lot of people congregate. Those are the places where you want to have intervention. Then the next question is, can we go and plant trees there? So you have to do a feasibility study to see which places are amenable to planting, which places are not. Once you identify where you want to plant trees, then you have to figure out what is the intervention you are going to do. Is it going to be roadside trees? Is it going to be parks? Is it going to be rooftop gardens or vertical walls? So depending on that, the plant selection will be different, because if you are going to roadside vegetation, you need to have trees with canopies to provide shade.
The UDS Director on Environment and Landscape, Chandana Kalupahana, says that in addition to streetscaping and other methods, the authority also plans to gazette mandatory green building certifications not only for government and semi-government buildings, but all private buildings as well in the near future.
The green building certification process, Blue Green Sri Lanka, was launched together with the Ministry of Environment in year 2017, aiming at finding solutions for the sustainable city context. We know that building stock also contributes negatively for the environment because of the energy it consumes and also the heat it emits, and also the materials it uses and the waste disposed. Going in line with that, at the moment we have it for government and semi-government buildings, because it was launched only for government and semi-government buildings, and we are open for private sector, but it is not mandatory. Now UDA is having a revision and new regulations to make the cities more sustainable and more livable, and also the resilient city concept is integrated into the UDA regulation process, and the regulations will be re-gazetted again with some revisions.
More news on the other side of this break. Stay tuned.
Ceylon Bank, the bank with a heart.
Welcome back. In more news, the Ministry of Health today issued a set of guidelines on how the Deepavali festivities must be conducted by members of the public without increasing the threat of further spread among communities. Meanwhile, 2 more COVID-19 fatalities were reported today, taking the total number to 48.
The country's COVID-19 fatalities rose by 2 more today, bringing the total figure to 48 so far. The 2 patients who passed away today were patients under treatment at the Mullaeriyawa Base Hospital. One of the victims was a 50-year-old resident of Colombo 12 who had an underlying chronic lung infection. The post-mortem report of the second victim cited a secondary bacterial infection stemming from pneumonia caused by the coronavirus. In the meantime, a total of 277 new COVID-19 infections were reported today. The country accounted for 635 COVID-19 infections yesterday. Accordingly, out of yesterday's figure, the highest number of COVID-19 cases were reported in the Colombo district with 348, out of which 300 were detected within the Colombo Municipal Council area. Of yesterday's figure, Gampa recorded a total of 136 COVID-19 infections, 25 from Kandy, 18 from Kaluthara, 5 from Matara, 4 from Puttalam, 3 from Gaul, 2 from Hambantota, and 1 patient each from Ratnapura, Ampara, Bandulla, and Jaffna. In the meantime, 74 police personnel were also reported among yesterday's figures, bringing the number of personnel infected by the virus to 686. Meanwhile, with 6 more prison inmates at the Bogambara prison testing positive for the virus yesterday, the total number of infected inmates rose to 159. In other developments, the Ministry of Health laid down a set of regulations to be adhered to through the Deepavali festival. With that, religious festivals will not be permitted to be held at Hindu kovils, communities or estates for the upcoming Deepavali festival. The ministry stated that the health guidelines and recommendations have been provided by the Hindu community, including Hindu religious leaders and community leaders, on how to safely celebrate the festival. In addition, devotees are also advised to use the telephone to wish their loved ones during the festival and try and avoid physical contact such as shaking hands or hugging. The ministry also urged the public to take steps to prevent the spread of the infection to their loved ones in high-risk areas such as Colombo, Gampaha and Kalutara by staying at home instead of gathering in groups. Meanwhile, health officials also issued a fire warning to the public, advising them not to light open flames after using hand sanitizer, which could potentially lead to serious injuries due to it containing high flammable alcohol.
Great news to anxious parents. The government announced that the syllabus for the all third-term compulsory subjects will be streamed for grade 3 to 13 students on television as well as in radio. TV Derana will be joining in the efforts when we begin telecasting GC ordinary level revision classes from next week. Meanwhile, health authorities began monitoring isolated areas using drones today, following reports of residents violating quarantine regulations by moving about and increasing the risk of further spread. Operations netted over a dozen violators today in the operation involving the Sri Lanka Air Force, the police and the Special Task Force.
With COVID-19 cases continuing to rise in the Western Province, the government decided yesterday to impose a travel ban on the province from midnight last night. The ban will remain in effect until midnight on Sunday, the 15th of November. With that, the police acted to turn back all vehicles attempting to leave the Western Province. In another development, the State Minister of Bus Transport Services has suspended entry of all passenger buses into the Western Province until the 15th. However, buses operating within the essential service sector will continue to operate. Meanwhile, the Sri Lanka Railways yesterday announced a suspension of train services from the Western Province to other areas throughout the travel ban period. However, office workers travelling on evening trains from Colombo to destinations within the Western Province will be allowed to travel up to the Aludgama, Ambepusa, Kochikade and Avisavella stations. In addition, the Sri Lanka Railways also announced today that all passenger trains operating island-wide will be cancelled on the 14th and 15th of November due to a drop in passenger numbers. In the meantime, plans were announced today to use drones to monitor the movement of residents in areas under isolation.
කැමරා මගින් ලබා දෙන දත්තයන් අනුව ඉදිරි පියවර ගැනීමට කටයුතු කරනවා. විශේෂ මෙහෙයුම් කණ්ඩායම් කිහිපයක් මේ සඳහා සූදානම් කර තිබෙනවා. එම දත්තයන් ලැබුණු විගසම අදාළ ස්ථානවලට ගොස් එම පුද්ගලයන් අත්අඩංගුවට ගැනීමට ක්‍රියා කරනු ලබනවා. විශේෂයෙන්ම මෙවැනි මෙහෙයුමක් ක්‍රියාත්මක කිරීමට හේතු වූයේ සමහර පිරිස් විසින් උදේකලා කරන ලද ප්‍රදේශවල නිරෝධායන රීතීන් වලට අනුගත නොවි කටයුතු කිරීමේ ප්‍රතිඵලයක් හැටියට විවිධාකාරයේ සංචාරණයන් සිදුවීම මෙම ආසාදිත තත්ත්වය ව්‍යාප්ත වීමට එවැගේ මෙම රෝගයේ ව්‍යාප්ත වීමට හේතුවක් වන බවට ලැබුණු තොරතුරු නිසා සෞඛ්‍ය අංශ වගේම ආරක්ෂක අංශත් මේ ගැන අවධානය යොමු කර මේ ආකාරයේ මෙහෙයුමක් කිරීමට තීරණය කර තිබෙනවා.
Accordingly, the operation commenced today in cooperation with the Sri Lanka Air Force, the police and the Special Task Force in the Modara Police Division. Meanwhile, several violators detected through the operation were taken into custody by the police. In other developments, the State Ministry of Education Reforms and Distance Learning Promotion has decided to utilize the television medium to cover the compulsory subjects for the third-term syllabus for grade 3 to 13 students if the government extends school closures.
ආට් නාලිකාව සම්බන්ධ කරගෙන ඉංග්‍රීසි මාධ්‍ය ආවරණය කරන්නත් අයි සහ නේත්‍රා නාලිකා මගින් සිංහල සහ දමිළ මාධ්‍යයන්ගෙන් විෂය ආවරණය කිරීම සඳහා වන්විල සංස්ථාව මගිනුත් විවිධ channel භාවිතා කළ ඒ අයගේ රූපවාහිනී මාධ්‍ය ඔස්සේ ආවරණය නොවන යම් ප්‍රදේශ තියෙනවා නම් එහෙම නැත්නම් දරුවෝ ඉන්නවා නම් එවැනි පහසුකම් නැති ගුවන්විදුලියක මාර්ගයෙන් හෝ එයාට එය ශ්‍රවණය කිරීමට අවස්ථාව සැලසී 16 වෙනි සඳුදා පෙරවරු 4 ඉඳලා මේ විකාශනයන් කිරීම ආරම්භ කරනවා. දැන් මේ සඳහා තිබෙනා වූ කාලසටහන අපි දැනට සම්පාදනය කරලා තිනවා සති දෙකකට. මේක අඛණ්ඩව සති 10ක් සඳහා තමයි මේ වැඩපිළිවෙල සකස් කරලා තින්නේ. උදේ 6ට ආරම්භ කරනවා 6-10 ශ්‍රේණි. සඳුදා සිට ඉරිදා දක්වාම මේ වැඩපිළිවෙල දින 7ෙම ක්‍රියාත්මක වෙනවා. හොට්ලයින් එකක් තියෙනවා 1377 මේ ඔස්සේ අපිව සම්බන්ධ කරගන්න පුළුවන්. ජනවාරි මාසයේට නියමිත සාමාන්‍ය පෙළ විභාගයේ ඉලක්ක කරගෙන එහි පුනරීක්ෂණ පන්ති කිසිදු අය කිරීමකින් තොරව පෙරණ නාලිකාව ඉදිරිපත් වෙලා තිනවා. එයාගේ ශබ්දාගාරවල ඒවා පටිගත කරලා විකාශනය කරන්නට අපි ලබන සතියේ ඒ වැඩසටහන ආරම්භ කරනවා.
The Sri Lanka Army raised its newest wing, the 15th Drone Regiment of the Sri Lanka Artillery, this morning. The new regiment was inaugurated during a brief ceremony at the Army headquarters, headed by Army Commander Lieutenant General Shavindra Silva. The Sri Lanka Army announced that the 15th Drone Regiment in the Sri Lanka Artillery has been well equipped with high-tech cameras in order to enable short and medium distances operations, as well as quadcopters with surveillance cameras for use in military or non-military applications. The Army commander stated that the Army was being prepared for future technical challenges or threats with the raising of the regiment in order for it to engage in reconnaissance duties, gathering of sensitive information to further strengthening national security needs and its concerns. 18 Sri Lanka Air Force officers and 92 airmen took wing to the Central African Republic on Tuesday as part of the 6th Sri Lankan Air Force contingent to be deployed for UN peacekeeping duties. The contingent will assume duties with the UN peacekeeping mission in the Central African Republic and take over from the 5th Sri Lankan contingent currently in the country. The contingent is led by Wing Commander J. Samarasekara and consists of various professionals required to perform duties at the UN peacekeeping mission in the Central African Republic. We'll return after this short commercial break. Don't go away. Welcome back in your business news. Allegations of insider trading have been leveled after Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla sold off 60% of his shares in the company the day its stock prices peaked, following the company's report on the effectiveness of its COVID-19 vaccine. The company denied any wrongdoing, insisting that the sale was legal. Pfizer said the sale of 132,508 shares on Monday at near peak value had been set up in August as part of Bourla's personal financial planning in keeping with a pre-established plan. The company added that the pre-established plan allowed major shareholders to trade a predetermined number of shares at a predetermined time. The Pfizer stock was sold at $41.94 per share at the peak of its value on Monday, netting him $5.6 million. The share price then climbed to $41.99 following a report that Pfizer's vaccine was 90% effective against COVID-19 before inching back down at the close of trading yesterday to sit at $38.50. Sri Lankan shares edged lower today as losses in the materials and financial sectors outweighed gains in consumer staples stocks. The benchmark all-share price index ended 0.11% lower, while the S&P SL 20 closed down 1.19%. Let's take a look at a brief report on how the market behaved throughout the day today.
Today was another dull day in the market, so the market is sort of slowing down after the ASPI has surpassed the 6,000 mark yet again. So with that, we are seeing a bit of selling pressure in the market. So the ASPI is today down by around just a mere 7 points. If you take the S&P SL 20, however, is a sizable drop of around 29 points. What we are seeing is some of the retail favorite stocks that were there is sort of coming down down with some selling pressure. There is a bit of profit taking also happening in the market. So with that, we are seeing a bit of downtrend in the market. We saw a bit of selling pressure in the banking sector counters as well. Turnover levels also dipped from the usual high level of turnovers of 2 to 3 billion, and today only registering around 1.5 billion.
With that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining. Have a good night.